Thanks very much for coming, everyone. I'm Davey Moor. I'm the curator at the RHA. So that means you must be Gary Coyle.
I am indeed, Davey. Yes, indeed. Yeah.
So we'll just go through a potted history, brief potted history.
Yeah.
You're a drawer, photographer, performance artist, I would say,
of sorts.
Spoken word artist, I suppose.
Yeah.
Do you want to give a little kind of brief kind of potted history, or?
Yeah.
No.
I was a student for 14
I was born.
I was a student for 14 years, which is a very long time. So I studied art history in UCD, and then I went to NCAD and studied art history and sculpture.
14 years.
Yeah, and then I left NCAD and I couldn't draw, so I went and studied drawing in New York for 3 years, and then I did a master's in sculpture at the Royal College of Art for 2 years.
Where did you study in New York?
I went to the New York Studio School until I was broke, and then I went to the Art Students League. So I went drawing every day for 3 years. And so studying art history, anyway, when I was in NCAD, drawing was considered to be like kind of really unimportant, and there was all sorts of derogatory comments made with me asking could I go to live drawing classes. But I'm mad into drawing.
Yeah.
And I think it's just really important for the type of work that I like.
It kind of feels like it's due another resurgence. You know, there was a big, I don't know, early noughties.
Yeah,
it was all about drawing for a while. Hopefully.
Yeah. So it keeps on coming back. So basically, I would love to be a sculptor, I suppose. And I when I finished my MA and I smashed up all my sculptures with a sledgehammer, I said, I'm never doing this again.
But you're still a frustrated sculptor.
If somebody offered me the right amount of space, I would go back to making sculpture. Okay. But it's, so this is why I've kind of done I get bored with drawing. Yeah. I have a low boredom threshold. And so...
I mean, in a sense, you would kind of walk into a sculpture in this show.
Certainly, like an awful lot of stuff, what I do would be very kind of, as low as I am to say it, kind of process-based, and another word I load is training in NCAD, that kind of comes true.
Okay, yeah, good stuff. And terra incognita, so...
No, terra cognita.
Terra cognita.
Yes.
Sorry, terra cognita, which is the known land of you. Actually, you mentioned something in Campania as well.
Yeah, Campania.
Yeah. Well, what was that reference exactly?
Well, I'm a massive fan of old dead white artists. The older, the better. And so I'm a huge fan of Claude Lorraine.
Okay. Yeah.
And so he always painted the Campania is the countryside outside
that
Rome.
region.
And so. It's his kind of personal landscape, and he reassembled bits of classical architecture all around the Campania. And he set various things in the Campania. And I suppose in Leary, my terra cognita is my Campania, if you will.
One of these has a Claude Lorraine?
That one there.
Yeah. With the owl.
With the owl, yeah.
It's a kind of composite.
Yeah, it's a mashup between various paintings, but all the trees on the background is based on something by Claude Lorraine.
And then you got the tower in the quarry?
In Dalkey, yeah.
In Dalkey.
Yeah. It's kind of like a haunted house trope, but it's also where a friend of mine died 40-something years ago. Okay.
Because I mean that's obviously, you know, the kind of darkness is not really a theme in your work, but it's always present. It's it's kind of hanging there.
Dark type of guy.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you say that, but
well, I did a thing called Death and Delirium.
Not particularly.
No. I did a performance called Death and Delirium, and I wrote all these stories. I took all these photographs of places where people had died in Dún Laoghaire. This is 20 years ago. And I wrote all these stories. It was only when I wrote all these stories to go with the photographs that they worked. And then I spoke to a well-known playwright, and I was drunk at his house one day, and he said, "Hey, you should write something." And I said, "Have you written anything?" And I brought him down this stuff, and he said, "You should do this on stage and I'm going to help you." So I said, sure. And I applied at the Arts Council, and they said, yeah. And he never helped me. And so I ended up.
I was wondering why you weren't naming him.
No, well, it also looks like I'm name dropping, but I found myself crying in a small room downstairs in Film Base, drinking neat whiskey before I went. I'm not joking. Before I went out on stage in front of all these people, utterly terrified, and so that's where all of that started.
Yeah. And that was Death in Dún Laoghaire.
That was
the first one. You've done 3 or so since.
Yeah.
Dún Laoghaire, like your father, I think you said something to me recently, and it was something like, it's what happens at the end of what's happening at the end of the road, basically, because a lot of his art was based kind of
at the bottom
psychically
of the road.
around that area, and you're very much the apple hasn't fallen far there. Like,
no. I think the everyday is really important to me. Yeah. And I don't see why people have to go to Timbuktu to make art. It happens at the bottom of your road, or things you encounter every day. Yeah. And that's why I end up doing all that swimming stuff as well, because I said they look like performance artists, and that started off as a joke. Yeah. And 26 years later, I'm still at it.
I mean, that is in a sense a performance. I mean, when I said earlier you were a performance artist, I mean, that's what I was referring to, because you're kind of constant going and swimming into theory. That's the performance, and everything else comes out of that. Yeah,
I'm like a Gilbert and George living statue. Yeah. And I got all started off as a joke. Yeah. And now it isn't anymore.
No one's laughing now. No. But it is. Like, it's interesting because, you're talking about the local, and yet, there's so many memes that you would draw on from the internet, which in a way kind of couldn't be further away. So you're kind of blending those two things, the local and the kind of ephemeral, meme culture in a sense.
Yeah. But also that stuff that's happening on your screen. It's happening in everyday life. Yeah. I'm not looking for weirdness. Yeah. And then also I feed them all through my companion, if you like. Yeah. Also, I visited every single road in Dún Laoghaire, which took me 4 years. I got a map, and if you've seen it, and I've visited en route going to and from swimming. I went to every single street. I cycled, I'm sure, a couple of 1,000 kilometers. So I visited every known, so that is my terra cognita.
Yeah. And you marked
I marked out the map
on the biro as you did it. That's in your book, actually.
It's in my book, And occasionally now I still find a new lane or a new street I haven't been down. I have to hop on my bike and cycle up and map it out. Yeah.
And would you photograph when you're doing this?
Sometimes. I know the young man did that in Iceland. He photographed every street in Reykjavik.
Oh, right.
I can't remember his name at the moment, but he's somebody very well known. Okay. Yeah.
Interesting. And then, so we're talking about like the memes and so forth and that. Like this girl here, that's from the internet, is that right?
No, that's from Vogue magazine.
Vogue, okay.
And the background is from a video game.
Fee Fi Fo Fum, is that right?
No, Fee Fi Fo Fum is a joke to that. No. Well, that's what the giant says when he's coming looking for people. Yeah.
But so this is a video game.
This is a video game. I think it's the Ghost of Kanishi is the. I'm very bad at video. I'm sure all you young people have played video games. But the money spent on the graphics, it's just extraordinary. Yeah. And they're incredibly beautiful. And I like the idea of getting something that's computer generated and then redrawing it by hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's all done really tediously. Like I draw them repeatedly and rub them out repeatedly. And it's like really, it's the opposite of quick art. Like it's just tedious. Yeah. And you put it on, you take it off, you put it on, you take it off.
Yeah, you have actually quite a high attrition rate for your drawings. Say from what eight in this show.
Yeah,
you might have started
16.
16.
Yeah,
right.
And then another 3 went past the first stage of being murdered, and then about 5 months ago, I said, right, they're not working. Yeah, gone. But binned. Yeah. Which is kind of satisfying in a way. Yeah. But so I work things really hard. I wish there was easier ways of making work in a way, which is why I end up talking or doing other stuff, because these things are really tedious and laborious. And, who really cares? I remember a well-known artist whose name I won't mention gave a talk in New York in MoMA, and she went on about how hard it was to make the work. And at the end, the Japanese woman came up and handed her a note saying, "We don't care how long it took you to make your art. Is it any good?" And I'll tell you who that was later on. And so, and in a way, she's kind of right. Who cares how long it took? Does it work or doesn't it work? Yeah.
So looking around, you've got the owl.
Yeah.
Is Bosch, is it?
Yes, it's Bosch had lots of owls. Nearly all his paintings have paintings of owls. Yeah. And they're both kind of harbingers of doom. Yeah. And they're also kind of wise creatures. I like kind of ambiguity. I hate art that kind of hits you over the head with a big stick or big massive labels that tell you exactly what to think. Yeah. So yeah, that's what that's about. Yeah.
And the eye is Rodin, is it?
The eye is Odile Rodin, yeah. And I've kind of mashed it up with another video game, but it's also, I suppose, about surveillance culture and man versus nature and the internet. An awful lot of stuff is derived from the internet.
But always the forest. Yeah. And well, in this show, for one of your previous shows in Kevin's, you had, I think it was mountains, was it? Yeah. But you typically.
This is my third forest.
This is your third forest.
Yeah, on this scale, yeah.
And it actually, I think this one is based on Sitka spruce forest, is that right? It is,
yeah.
It actually looks quite lush, but, Sitka spruce, and I think you mentioned it in your, in the piece for the show that it's monoculture.
Yeah.
And do you want to expand on that? It's when you go into a Sitka spruce forest, it's kind of dead. It's kind of like a husk.
There's nothing else there.
I think you're probably this is the outside view in a way of the forest.
I don't want to again give hostages a fortune. I suppose I kind of view our wider culture a bit like that.
Okay, yeah. Well, it fits in with your overall work, in the sense that there's something kind of it's kind of there can be kind of slightly edgy places when you go into them.
Yeah, they're really
not
hideous
particularly
places.
Lush.
No, they're ghastly places to be in.
So the other ones and the other forests, you also did Cool Park, was it?
Yeah. Cool Park, where Lady Gregory and W. Yeats went to find fairies.
Yeah, and magical place.
A magical place. Well, they're liminal spaces, I suppose. That another cliched word. Liminal iteration. We should draw up a list of people involved in the art words we should ban. But they're magical places.
After this talk,
they're magical places in which things can happen.
Yeah.
They're in between places.
Yeah.
And the previous one was Unabomber's Forest.
The Unabomber's Forest.
Yeah. He was a very interesting guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dark, yes. There's no frames in these. It's quite often you would use frames.
Yeah.
And was the decision not to use frames here?
20 grand is the decision.
Oh, sorry. No, I actually didn't mean this kind of frame. I meant literally like a drawn frame. No.
For some reason, I've done them a couple of times. I got
20 grand is probably what it would cost you to draw them.
Well, if I anyway, yes. No, I'd have everything framed if I had another 20 grand, but I don't. But yeah, those drawing frames, again, I had used that motif. I've done it 2 or 3 times. I do return to the same topics over and over again. I try something out and then it's next. But I do like to keep moving, and also working in black and white all the time. Yeah, drives me nuts.
You did a show in Dún Laoghaire, which was very different, actually. It was, I said to you today, iPad drawings, you're like, no, Wacom.
Right, Wacom pads.
Wacom pad drawing.
Yeah.
So just something like a relief from the...
It was great because COVID happened.
Yeah.
And I had this commission and it was so dark and bleak.
Yeah.
And I couldn't go out to Dún Laoghaire because the police kept on stopping me on my bike and sending me home. And it was like Dickens's London outside the door. And so I used to go into my studio every day and draw these kind of lush, bright, colourful pictures, and it was really enjoyable and totally escapist.
Did you work from source images, or did you just...
I know source. I'm not one of these people. If you say to me, draw a car, I need to look at a car to draw it. Whereas people I know can, my own man, whatever you ask him to draw, he just draw it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't trace anything. Everything is tediously squared up and copied.
Yeah, you use a kind of like a grid system.
I use a grid system.
Probably visible here. It's probably visible kind of just about if you look.
Yeah. I just think that if stuff is projected, it kind of gets a bit bland. I think there's a kind of a slight awkwardness about, doing it all tediously by hand. Yeah. You can see the hand in it,
Yeah. And the sea is obviously an important part of, what you do. So the sea is kind of similar to the forest. Is that another liminal space, or is that something different?
I suppose it's certainly, that picture drawing of sea is called a deluge, actually. But I suppose it is a liminal space for me, certainly, yeah. But originally I was going to put text on it, and then every time I went to do it, I said, actually, no, I prefer it the way it is. I want to bang my drum, but what's kind of exciting about rubbing it out is you start.
That's how you put the text on. You rub out. Is that?
Yeah, I would have done that, but it's kind of every time I draw something, then I destroy it, and most of the time, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it looks better when you rub it out and then you do it again, and you kind of have to keep on. Will I do it one more time? Will I do it? And then sometimes you go too far and it goes. But so I really enjoyed that with drawing the sea.
So that's interesting. So you because I mean, like in previous shows, you've had quite a lot, FOMO or yes, no. Well, that beautiful one day, dreaming different dreams.
Dreaming different dreams.
Kim Jong-un.
I love that. In the last show, Kim Jong-un, who's the successor of Kim Jong-un, his uncle was his regent when he first took over, and he had him killed. And one of the reasons he had him killed was because he was dreaming different dreams. And I think that's just kind of brilliant. I mean, it's mind you, we're in that world now. People with all your internet looks and likes and all the rest of it, they do know your dreams now, I'm sure, They know how you tick,
Yeah, well, we're in a world where everyone's dreaming different dreams.
I know.
Trump.
Yes, indeed, yes. A terrifying notion.
But it is interesting because I didn't realize that. So you might have text. Say it's kind of like, will I add it? It's not like necessarily it's planned out.
Well, with the FOMO one, I regret FOMO because FOMO wasn't a thing until COVID happened. I'm not claiming that I'm prescient. Everybody was talking about FOMO.
If you hadn't done FOMO, though, would you have had FOMO?
This guy is sharp. And then I regret it because it became such a hackneyed thing with the COVID. Right, everybody was talking about FOMO.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. We talk about you've done a couple of self-portraits.
Yeah.
This one is quite interesting. You weren't quite sure if it was Slash or. Well, it's a mash. It's a mashup. Alice Cooper, obviously, would be.
Many years ago, I was asked to do a drawing for the do a portrait for the National Self-Portrait Collection, and it was one of the worst things that I've ever done. And
because you were asked to do it, in a way.
No, but just like my face is kind of ridiculous, and the whole thing, trying to get a neutral. It was really.
Was it forced because you were asked to do it?
Well, I was delighted to be asked, but trying to. In terms of the image to work from, trying to get the right face. And then there's this German word called, it's in the thing, called kind of truth through a mask. And I discovered by putting on a mask, actually, you could do a really much more believable or...
You can be yourself more.
You can be yourself, exactly, as opposed to putting the face. I do not own a single heavy metal record. I hate heavy metal in all of its guises, but it's kind of a piss take on I love all that doom and gloom stuff makes me just laugh.
Because you are quite interested in some of the imagery. And even the fonts and all that stuff.
Yeah. But the music itself is terrible, and as somebody who likes my clothes, I couldn't think of anything worse than dressing as a heavy metaler, and
as someone who spends a lot of money to make them look like they're they're just dressed in
Yes.
10 seconds.
I find it all bizarre. So yeah, and the background is obviously there's lots of art references. I'm a big fan of Joshua Reynolds' swag. You know what a swagger portrait is? It's all these kind of big showy offy kind of melodramatic portraits of people pretending to be something that they're not. So the background is actually a Reynolds swagger portrait there. So there's lots of art in this show. But
There is a lot of art.
I'm a big art buff,
Yeah.
and I'm an omnivore, and so I like all types.
Mixed in though with, I mean, it was when you told me that this was from Vogue or whatever. I mean, it's so tender.
Yeah.
And yet, when you hear it from that,
Yeah.
it kind of seems like it's like dissonant kind of idea, in a way. Yeah.
Well, like everybody else, I go through an awful lot of stuff, like looking for images. I mean, I look at Vogue all the time, and I've seen, because it's a great place to steal ideas from, let's face it. Yeah. But it's only that's the only time I've ever found, oh my God, that's such an amazing image. And so it's also kind of a reference to Baltus, who's again somebody who you can't really mention either these days, but I'm a big Baltus fan. And so...
probably a bit tamer. But
I know, but he has lovely paintings of a girl lying down looking out. Yeah. So, but I'm constantly looking for stuff to steal, And
a lot of you have so many online references, but anyone who knows you will know that you have an old brick or whatever they call them.
Yes, I won't virtue signal and produce it out of my pocket. I have an old Nokia, whatever it is. But the thing is, for the show, I have a tablet which I do use to post, and I very rarely bring it home. And I've had it home for the last couple of weeks because of the show, and I am in a state of anxiety with the news, and so. The reason why I got rid of it was in 2017 when Trump was first elected, I was losing my mind. And Fiona said, you have to get rid of that phone. And so I did. And I haven't had a smartphone since then.
So you use it for work. It's very much like...
Yeah. And I don't look at the internet during the week at home. Like I leave my studio and there's no internet at home.
Do you watch the news?
At the moment, no.
Because you used to be a voracious reader of
I'm afraid the news is so bad.
Yeah.
I will switch off the first 10 minutes of the news every day. I scroll down 2 minutes in the New York Times or the Guardian, so I don't read about Donald Trump.
Get past all that stuff.
Get past all of that. Sadly, in the Daily Mail, which I also read, Donald Trump comes about 5 pages down after Meghan and Laura Higgins. He's further down.
Who?
The Fanny Flutters one from Longford, who's become a pardon? Moor Higgins. Sorry. Yeah. So. Yeah, so I love Ireland, exactly. So, but
so you read the Daily Mail.
You have to know what your enemy's about. I'm over Trump. I can't look at it.
Yeah, he's pretty bad.
He's pretty bad. He's pretty bad.
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Well, this is obviously a copy of the wallpaper itself. And I just gave me the most amount of trouble because it's smaller and it's actually very difficult. Anyway, I've discovered the reason why the drawings are so big is it's easier to work big in charcoal than small.
Yeah. This is the kind of is this the optimal size?
Yeah, for me, yeah. Though I'd actually like to go bigger. So this is kind of a doppelganger. A doppelganger is kind of a...
So you created the wall drawing first, then? This is from that?
Yeah. And the wall drawing is actually based on a JPEG that size.
Really?
And I had to have somebody stitch it together for me.
You work with designers. You've worked with a lot of different designers.
I really like collaborating with people because it's really boring going into your studio every day and doing the same thing. And that's another reason why I get up on stage, even though I'm terrified. It's actually really good to work with other people.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting because, for the wallpapers, you've worked with different people for each time. Is that just to kind of to keep it fresh?
Yeah, and they always bring something different, and that's great, And so collaboration is great, I have to say. An awful lot of artists don't do it, and I think it's a really, really good thing to do. So long as it's not with the same person. I can only. I know that the Chapman brothers hate one another and don't talk to each other anymore.
That's right. Yeah.
And but that must be torture. It's like worse than a marriage.
Yeah, when they're not working together anymore.
No. One lives in LA and one's in London. They're both the worse off for it. But
those poor millionaires.
Yeah. I'd love to be a poor millionaire.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
Yeah. But I mean, so that's a doppelganger.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a ghostly copy. If you saw your doppelganger, I'm very into the Gothic as opposed to the Sublime. The Sublime is kind of too po-faced, and the Gothic is kind of trashier and more humorous and more fun. And it doesn't take itself too seriously. And I think the Gothic is much more suitable to these times than, who can cope with the Sublime anymore, Yeah.
And are you working on any more spoken word things? Well, you did, sorry, I should mention the thing, of course, in... it was originally in Molly, and it was also shown in Crawford.
In the Crawford,
which was about
now
Peg.
part of the permanent collection, which is great.
Yeah. And everyone's favourite island woman, Peg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, bizarrely, the stuff that I don't have to go look. People approach me all the time now to write stuff.
Yeah.
And I've had the second career as a writer, which I find kind of rather odd, but I'm happy to go with it. So I'm actually trying to write a book about art at the moment.
Okay.
And I've kept.
The angle?
Well, I've always, over the last 20 years, one of the reasons I made Ireland more tolerable when I came back from living abroad was going away. And I don't really keep a diary except swimming, but I always kind of kept a record of the shows that I saw and the things that I encountered. And during, again, the COVID, when I was stuck up in my cave, I was really missing being able to go away. So I ended up going into all my old diaries, thinking about all the exhibitions that I loved or hated. And so I'm trying to do something with that at the moment.
Kind of key.
Well, it's kind of like everything. It's from my own kind of personal point of view, but it's hopefully it's funny, and so that's what I'm working on at the moment.
And you say you were asked to do the Peg Sayers one?
Yeah, I was approached by.
Like, it's not something you would have chosen.
No, Simon asked me. I said no, and then he mentioned some of money, and I said of course, and then I really enjoyed it. But and it was really enjoyable. But again, I kind of fed the whole thing to, lots of people, when I meet people around Ireland, they say to you, where are you from? When I say I'm from Dunleary, and they go, Kingstown, you're not Irish. So it was kind of an examination of Irishness, if you like, And Peg is seen as the Uber Gael, and I'm seen as the
Uber West Brit.
Uber West Brit, and so I kind of enjoyed that,
And also kind of, you got, that was another sculptural installation in a way.
Yeah. Working with Dave Smith from Atelier, and again, collaboration and working with other people. So it's really enjoyable. And so I like that, something kind of rocks up and you end up doing it and it just takes you off on a different path. Like with my friend, the playwright, saying, I ended up doing 3 performances and I want to actually redo my one about swimming, because when I last did it in 2010, and there's a further 16 years of swimming diaries. And
you
records.
Still go swimming 3 times a week?
In the winter, 3 times a week.
You're not living out there anymore?
I'm in exile. I'm not joking. They
didn't chase you out with pitchforks or anything?
No, just gentrification chased the likes of me out of there.
Yeah.
So I want to go back, actually.
Yeah.
I don't want to die in town. But but it's funny how Dublin has changed, because when I go to London a lot, and I go from East London to West London, and it was like going to a different country, and now I feel that in Dublin. Like, so when I live in the North Inner City, and I go out to Sandy Cove or Dunleary, it's like, Jesus Christ, it's posh out here.
And you just didn't notice that before? Or?
I know it was rough when I was
yeah.
there. It was suddenly since we left the last 8 years, there's been I still know half the junkies in the main street, but that's all been all the grot has slowly been driven out, and flatland's been driven out.
Okay, interesting. And are you still you're still photographing when you swim?
I am, though. Last week I lost my camera on the train drunk, so along with 6 months of photographs, I have to buy a new one. But I know, no, absolutely. I'm getting a new camera tomorrow, actually.
Sure.
And I've taken 25,000 photographs. Today was my 5,498 swim. I have 150 swimming diaries. I mean, it just goes on. The obsessive compulsiveness never stops.
That seems to me like an obsession.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just something you do without kind of even, what's the thought process? Is it kind of, get to kind of a point where it's just muscle memory?
That's what I find really interesting. I'm like an open camera, and I go out and I record all the stuff. For example, yesterday I was going out and I was walking along Moor Street, and I saw this really, really beautiful, very black woman, like really dark skin. She's really beautiful, and she had a slight scar on her face, and she was walking with a limp, and I looked down, she had a full prosthetic leg under her really cool jeans. And so you see, and I wrote all that down. Mm-hmm. So because so that's what I saw yesterday. I record everything on the way out and everything on the way back, or anything that kind of. So it's a great way of just recording my everyday environment.
So in a sense, that journey, even though you have a much bigger journey now, that's kind of feeding into it.
Absolutely, yeah. So I am a living sculpture from when I leave my door till I go out and when I come back. And again, it all started off as a joke, and now if you saw the amount of stuff that I've gathered, and I'd love to do it again. So let's see what happens. Apparently I'm funny.
Tell us a joke then.
Well, no, I'm very bad at jokes.
Why don't we put it to the audience, and has anyone got any questions they'd like to ask?
Yeah, just when you're doing the drawing, the charcoal drawings, and you rub it out.
Yeah.
Do you rub it out on purpose? Or
Yeah.
If you draw it correctly initially, why rub it out?
Because something builds up, you kind of get I like chance. First of all, I replicate the photograph 100%. And then I want to own it and make it my own, as opposed to just replicating somebody else's image. And so when you start rubbing it out, other stuff starts to happen, and you go, oh, what? I like that. And then you go with that, and then you rub it out again, and something else happens. And so that's why. And also, the more you rub it out, the more beautiful the texture is. And I also really, really like that the physical texture of the charcoal on the paper. I think it's very beautiful.
But also, erasure is not anti-drawing, it's also drawing.
Absolutely, yeah. And I suppose, one of the things I really like about Gerhard Richter is that he really talks about the importance of chance. And I think that chance is really, I know an artist whose name I won't mention, and they said to me, they know exactly what they want to do when they start making their picture. And my answer was, then why bother? So
why do you call, at the beginning of the talk, you said the word tedious?
Yeah.
5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
With regard to your process.
Yeah.
But what you just said sounds not tedious, it sounds a bit joyful. So what is the tedious element that you're consigned
is tedious
to do?
I suppose, Dawn, it just takes so long to get them right. And I said, so much so that I'm not taking my phone. I got such a bad eye infection from the amount of charcoal dust in the room. So
he was putting in eye drops just before this.
I would have gone on for another 8 months if I hadn't had a deadline. So I want to get it as good as I can possibly get it.
It's in a way, it's tedious, but not necessarily in a negative sense. It's just, it's kind of like droning nearly.
It's just like, man, here we go again, you know. But I'm delighted. Like, I was working, again, I'm not taking up my violin, to the day Kevin picked these up on the Monday, I was working on the Sunday. So I just, to get them, because I think if you are going to put something in a gallery, you have to, whatever you do in that time, you have to do your very best. I don't believe in Asher, that'll do, you know. You have to give it your all. And so, but it's just like, you know, I haven't done nothing else but work for the last 18 months. So, I mean, I'm not kind of bragging, but it's just, oh man, would this ever stop? But
like, speaking of the process of drawing, and would you listen to, I know you're a big fan of disco music.
yeah.
But what kind of music did you listen to in the studio when you're making?
I dance a lot in the studio.
Okay.
I have gone off talk radio because it's all Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So I listen to an awful lot of all sorts of music.
Yeah, okay.
Again, I'm an omnivore in everything except for heavy metal.
Okay.
I've one AC/DC record. And so, yeah, I would dance a couple of times. I love dancing. I think I did a drawing called The Death of Disco about when they blew up all those disco records in 1979. And to grow up in Ireland in the 70s, this was such a grim, dark, oppressive place. And the one thing that they couldn't control was the music. And there was all this incredibly joyous black soul music on the radio and on top of the pops. And it's still like my favorite music of all time, or some derivation of it. And it's just so joyful. And it's everything that Ireland wasn't, and they couldn't control that. And so, and the end of disco really was and that marked the end of, I think, really of the 60s. 60s died in 79, you know, all that joyous positivity all disappeared. So yeah, I'm a huge disco fan, yeah. I love music. In fact, I often talk to you about music. That's why you always ask me, what am I listening to? But so, yeah, I love music.
Yeah. A lot of artists would find it hard to listen to music with words in the studio, but that's not a concern.
Sometimes, like when I was finishing everything, I wasn't listening to words.
Yeah. Like it's too distracting.
It's too distracting. Yeah. But like at the start, I certainly was, yeah.
Any other questions?
Go on, give us a question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, Joe.
I have a sneaking suspicion that everything you do, particularly the meticulous documentation of, the Roses and Lyria, the swims and the river beds that you use, and I look around the room always. Every time I look at your work, I see you. So I'm just thinking, like, how much of your work is self-portraiture? I think it's 100%, but you could.
Listen, I'm sure that's true. I'm sure you can say that about an awful lot of artists. Certainly, it all comes from me and through me. I know some people thought that was me. It isn't. But no, absolutely. It's also funny, Joe. I don't know whether you would never made figures out of clay, but if you do, they end up looking like you as well. It's kind of weird. When I was doing sculpture, you'd start sculpting in clay, and you go, that doesn't look like the model, it looks like me. So I'm sure there is absolutely a truth in that, yeah.
Even in the animals, I've seen Gary here staring at them.
Well, good. Hopefully it's mostly a benign force. But no, I mean, it's true. What's the name of the guy, the Dutch Flemish guy, self-portrait, he had a big show in the Douglas Hyde, Manners, is that his name? Or I'm getting very bad with names at middle age. Anyway, yes.
You and me both.
Yeah. But yes, no, absolutely, Joe, there's absolutely a valid argument to be put to that, yeah.
Anyone else? Actually, I did want to ask you, did you have pets? I know you don't have any now, but did you ever have pets?
We had a cat.
If that's not too random a question.
No,
I'm thinking of it in relation
to,
you have a lot of animals in your work.
Well, just the biggest memes on the internet, and now that people have, I am fascinated with cat videos like everybody else. I was doing cats 10 years ago, but I did a lot of cats. They are just truly bizarre, but also their mutated nature, So, absolutely, I'm big into pets.
Mutated nature, is Poodle in the windows?
Poodle in the window, which people haven't seen, yeah. Again, that's kind of, I love drawing the poodle.
Yeah.
There are pleasures. You're talking about tedious. I do love drawing fur and textures, like, even though it's really tedious, like getting it right and obsessing, or the velvet on the hat. Mm-hmm. Like when, I try and get them to my liking. So there's a poodle in the window, and I really
Have you ever thought use graphite?
I have tried. I like the velvetiness of it, and I don't use compressed charcoal. I use willow charcoal. There's a whole range of textures. My last drawing show of charcoal was 5 years ago, so I'm going to give it a rest now, I think, for a while and do something else. But it's something that I'll always come back to. And I said, I think that if you have ambition, anyway, this is my own view. I think it's something you have to wrestle with as an artist. That's my own view in terms of my tradition. I think that it's something that's very important to the art that I believe in, and drawings at the key of all the people I like, whether it's Cy Twombly or Jagar, whoever it is. There's people who really are, Philip Gusson, people who are really into drawing. I think it's just so important to me, and also it's really enjoyable.
If you use graphite, you wouldn't get any eye infections, and you wouldn't be miserable. So that would be.
Well, I'll give it a go.
You might see it in the eyes though by mistake. So there's not much.
I will give it a go. I now have to draw with a ski mask on. It's under doctor's orders. So
you should do a picture of that.
I know. Yeah. Well, I think it's more. I think I reveal more of myself dressed up as a scary clown, or as a Slash meets Alice Cooper than I do of a po-faced me trying to look serious in a drawing.
Very good. Great. Okay, we'll wrap it up. Thanks very much, everyone, for coming.
Cheers. Thank you for coming.